So when do you use what software? Well, Photoshop is a bitmap software and it's made up of millions of tiles of colour. That sort of software is great for adjusting photographs and drawings. You might create posters, you might make complex adjustments and add filters to photographs or drawings. Illustrator, on the other hand, is a vector software that allows you to draw crisp, clean drawings. And so you're going to find drawings and designs for things like logos, avatars, typography, illustrations, and so on. InDesign itself is a software that you might bring everything together. So although that you might make the actual design here in Photoshop, you might output it through InDesign. You might make the logo design, these little logo designs, you might do those in Illustrator. But you would then assemble them on the business card or the letterhead in InDesign. It's not absolutely necessary to do all of this in InDesign. So for instance, you could output something like this from Photoshop or Illustrator, but InDesign is a really good place to learn how to assemble. And for instance, particularly if you wanted to make something double-sided, such as this business card. This is a flyer for a pool party. This would be a good example of something that you might assemble in InDesign. But there's nothing to stop you doing it in Photoshop. So it wouldn't be incorrect. You just have more control over it in the end in InDesign. And particularly if you want double-sided printing. This flyer, for instance, it would be quite difficult to do it in Illustrator or in Photoshop. And again, InDesign is there just to make it a lot easier. Small pamphlets, booklets, right through to major publications, really thick books, can be assembled in InDesign. Imagine if you had to do that in Photoshop. It just would be really, really difficult. So here's a nice poster that would have been assembled in InDesign. And InDesign itself is principally, it's set out as a vector. So what vectors allow you to do is they allow you to nominally set the resolution, and then you can create sizes that are much bigger than where you started from, providing you're using vector imagery and the typography from within InDesign. So this is a little blurred, that's just simply because of the screen grab. But posters, whether they be simple or all the posters that you see out on the street, they may have begun their life in Photoshop, maybe Illustrator, but they may have been outputted from InDesign. This is an example of an infographic. That's something else that you could assemble. All of the actual graphics would probably be made in Illustrator, but then assembled in Photoshop. Wouldn't be wrong to assemble them in Illustrator, nothing wrong with that, but InDesign is a good place to finish the job off and to add the typography as well. Interactive docs. So InDesign allows you a certain level of interactivity, so you can have page turns like this. You could make creative galleries for iPads. You could make portfolios which are interactive. They're not websites, but they give you some form of interactivity, and all of you have probably come across flip pages where you can literally pick the page up and turn it as well. Of course, long documents. Now this is where InDesign really comes into its own. This kind of document would be really impossible to make in Photoshop or Illustrator. You really need a place where you can assemble lots of information, lots of typography, types of typography, lots of images, and a huge number of pages. So I'll explain a little bit more about that later on. And then of course, magazines. The same thing applies. The magazine industry relies on software like InDesign